Over the past decade, police in America shot and killed more than 2,000 people who were in the midst of a mental health crisis. That's 1 of every 5 police killings. And those grim numbers are fueling a movement.
There is violent crime or criminal activity, we need to send law enforcement. But people call 911 for a whole bunch of other reasons. And most of those reasons, because we haven't had another branch to sort them into, have gone to law enforcement.
However conscientious, helping people during a mental health emergency can take special skills.
We didn't have the professional knowledge on how to work with someone that clearly was going through a moment of crisis.
Some call it the 5th branch of emergency response, staffed by social workers and EMTs trained to respond to a mental health emergency. Coming up from American Public Media is Call to Mind, the 5th branch. We go to Durham, North Carolina to hear how they've transformed their city's crisis response. The phone rings. It's a little after 6 on a sunny August evening in Durham, North Carolina. The year is 2022. Police Chief Patrice Andrews picks up.
One of my deputy chiefs said, "So we have a barricaded person."
The deputy tells Patrice the man had a history of mental illness. The family is worried he might hurt himself, and they're asking officers to force him to go to the hospital. Officers are now camped outside the house, and the man is making threats.
He said, "I'm not coming out, and if you come in, I'm going to shoot you all."
The deputy tells Patrice a hostage negotiator is now on the scene, and he's about to call the SWAT team.
And I said, "Well, wait a minute. Let's hold on. Let's talk about this for a second."
Patrice takes a breath. As a cop for more than 20 years, she wants everyone to take a breath.
Whether, he would have shot an officer or officers would have shot him, I don't have a crystal ball, but I tell you there were the makings in that for maybe it not to end well.
Police Chief Patrice Andrews knows what she wants to do.
I said, "Let me call Ryan."
Back in 2022, Ryan Smith headed up a brand new department in Durham, a radical experiment in public safety. Patrice knew the last people Ryan would send would be a SWAT team. Ryan would send a social worker. I'm Angela Davis, and you're listening to Call to Mind, the 5th branch, a broadcast special from American Public Media's initiative to foster new conversations about mental health. Police in America shot and killed 2,057 people who were in the middle of a mental health crisis between 2015 and 2024. That's 1 of every 5 police killings in the last decade. Those numbers are fueling a movement. Cities like Denver, Albuquerque, Houston, Louisville, New York, and others have launched what are called alternative crisis response programs. Instead of armed police, a new generation of responders, EMTs and social workers, now handle a growing number of 911 calls involving mental illness, addiction, or suicidal thoughts. This is a big departure from conventional practice. As more and more cities start these new units, journalist Ryan Levy has been digging into whether they are working. Ryan is the managing editor for Trade-Offs, a nonprofit news organization covering health policy. Here's what he found.
We wanted to go to a place that experts thought could be a model for other cities, a place serious about data and willing to let me spend a bunch of time with them. I talked to several interesting programs, New Orleans, Denver, Rochester, New York. In the end, we went with Durham, North Carolina, and its holistic, empathetic assistance response team, what locals call HEART.
Ryan spent 6 months reporting in depth in Durham in 2024. He produced a podcast series for Trade-Offs in partnership with the Marshall Project, a nonprofit investigative news organization focusing on the criminal justice system in America. Ryan has continued following HEART's work in Durham over the last couple of years, and for the next hour, he's going to share his reporting with us. Through Durham's experience, Ryan will explore 3 big questions facing any community that wants to change how it responds to mental health crises. How do you get police to buy into a new way to treat people in crisis? Can it keep people safe? And how big should these programs be? Here's Ryan Levy.
The story of Durham's radical rethinking of how to respond to mental health crises begins in late June 2020.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Hundreds of people marched through downtown Durham.
I understand y'all anger. See, us black people, let me tell you something, we are tired.
We've seen these protesters hit the streets here in Durham for almost 10 days now.
Yes, there are some quote-unquote good cops, but if you're letting the bad ones keep doing what they're doing, you're just as bad. I'm an cop.
The protests here look a lot like they do across the country, following the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer. Signs, chants, calls to reform the police. Protesters paint the word defund in bright yellow letters on Main Street with an arrow pointing to police headquarters. A few blocks away, the word fund in the same crisp yellow with an arrow pointing toward the Department of Social Services. These protests spark city officials to launch an independent review of Durham's 911 data. They find that violent crime accounts for just a small fraction of all calls. Trespassing, verbal disturbances, and mental health crisis calls make up much of the rest. To respond to those calls, city leaders earmarked $3 million in June 2021 to create the Community Safety Department. They tap Ryan Smith to run it.
This work, in part, is about helping people imagine something that they may not have imagined.
This new agency gives Ryan a chance to solve an old public safety problem.
Your house is on fire, we send fire. You're having cardiac arrest, we send EMS. There are shots fired, there is violent crime or criminal activity, we need to send law enforcement. But people call 911 for a whole bunch of other reasons. And most of those reasons, because we haven't had another branch to sort them into, have gone to law enforcement.
For decades, Durham had 4 branches of public safety: 911 answering the call, police, fire, and EMS. City leaders want Ryan to build a 5th branch, where 911 dispatches social workers and other mental health workers instead of armed officers. This kind of unarmed response in the U.S. has actually been around for a while. The first programs to send mental health workers to 911 calls date back to the 1980s, and more than half of the country's 50 largest cities have now launched or piloted alternative response programs.
This work, in part, is about helping tell the story of what this is looking like in other communities. These are the calls they're already sending these types of responders to. All the bad things that you're worried about, we're not seeing evidence of that.
Ryan designs a program for Durham with 4 parts. Put a mental health worker inside 911 who will resolve some calls over the phone. Deploy teams of unarmed social workers, EMTs, and people with lived experience to respond to non-violent calls involving mental illness and homelessness. For crisis calls that involve the threat of violence, have 911 dispatch a clinician and a specially trained Durham cop. And the last piece, HEART teams work with people to connect them to longer-term help after a crisis call. To make that program a reality, though, Ryan has to figure out how to deal with people like Sergeant Dan Leader.
I'm like, this is going to be a disaster. I said, it is not going to go over well.
A whole lot of officers in the Durham Police Department see this new department as an attack. Ryan understands their point of view. The idea of this new branch came from the defund law enforcement protests. Based on what he's learned from other cities, Ryan believes getting police buy-in gives the whole enterprise its best shot.
One thing that I've noted is the inability to get law enforcement buy-in can lead to programs like ours being much smaller than they need to be or is warranted.
Quick word about why Ryan seemed up to this challenge. He's calm. The 46-year-old is quick to empathize and slow to anger. And behind his khakis and button-downs, Ryan has this quiet intensity to him. Finally, and this is random, but it'll make sense in a minute, he's got a bird name.
My bird name is Chickadee. It's an important part of our identity in the department.
Actually, everyone at HEART has a bird name. Ryan's assistant director came up with the idea, a kind of department bonding thing. Ryan got Chickadee.
Can you give me the short version of why Chickadee for you?
Here, let's go. I'll read it to you because it's...
Ryan reads to me from a colorful printout.
Chickadees move in a small group called a banditry and forage together. It decreases their chances of a hawk taking them by surprise.
It's taped to his office window in City Hall.
By example, the chickadee shows us how working in a cooperative team means more eyes and ears and fewer opportunities for predators.
Ryan is good at seeing problems and building teams to find solutions. If he can get Durham's police leaders on board, he thinks, they can help him persuade all those skeptical rank-and-file cops.
For the police chief to say, yes, this is good work, to me that was the dream. Can I make that happen?
Turns out, Ryan was lucky.
Are you ready, Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
It's December 2021.
I state your name.
Patrice Andrews.
Do solemnly swear.
Patrice Andrews stands on stage at North Carolina Central University, the same historically black school in Durham she'd attended 30 years earlier.
That I will be faithful.
That I will be faithful.
And bear true allegiance.
And bear true allegiance.
To the state.
Dressed in her black ceremonial Durham Police Department uniform, she takes her oath, becoming the city's 33rd police chief. There are a few things I want you to know about Patrice. She comes from an old Durham family. Her dad integrated city schools as a kid. She worked as a beat cop here for 20 years. But here's the most important thing. She's taking this job at 48 in part because she wants to reduce the harm that police can cause. Patrice grew up hearing stories from her parents about the racism and harassment they faced.
Law enforcement was an extension of an oppressive government. I mean, just in a nutshell.
Patrice determined all those years ago to be the kind of cop that would make everyone feel safe. She struggled sometimes, though, to find her identity in the uniform.
There were times where I knew that some of the force that I saw and participated in was excessive. But how do you call that out? It's very hard to call that out when you don't necessarily feel like you would be supported in doing that.
As she prepares to become Durham's top cop, Patrice understands law enforcement's opposition to Hart runs deep. But she also understands firsthand how hard it can be for cops to respond to a person with mental illness.
I remember responding to a call, and there was a woman that was seeing things in her home.
Patrice had been on the force for a few years by this point. She and her partner had driven to the home of a woman who had repeatedly called 911, saying there were intruders. It quickly became clear there were no intruders.
She'd point to a lamp and she'd say, they're behind the lamp. And so we'd go over there and say, you're trespassed, you can't be here.
Patrice and her partner hoped chasing the figures away, these figures only this woman could see, would bring her some peace. But she called 911 again and again.
And we kept saying, you can't call us anymore for this. You know, we've told the people to get out of your home and they're out. You can't call us anymore. Don't call us anymore.
She kept calling.
We didn't know what to do. We didn't have the knowledge, the professional knowledge on how to work with someone that clearly was going through a moment of crisis. The only thing we knew to do was take her to jail because for us, that was solving our problem.
Patrice never learned what happened to that woman, just that the calls stopped.
I often wonder, did we harm her mentally more in doing that? Did it serve a purpose aside from our wanting her to stop calling 911?
Patrice spent 20 years seeing the limits and abuses of policing. She had learned change could come through policy by becoming a supervisor, a leader, a chief.
And judgment.
And judgment.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you.
And now she's ready to be that change.
I am going to be unapologetic about saying, you're wrong, that's wrong, and, we're going to fix this.
The ceremony ends, the crowd thins. As she heads home, Patrice thinks to herself that Hart, this new, unarmed public safety response, offers her, and really her whole department, a chance to do better. For cops to do their best work, and for Hart to do something different.
We can do both. We can have a wonderful professional police department. We can also have amazing public safety partners in Hart.
You're listening to Call to Mind, The Fifth Branch, a broadcast special produced by Trade-Offs. I'm Ryan Levy. Police Chief Patrice Andrews was on board, but she still had to convince a few hundred deeply skeptical officers, like Sergeant Dan Leader.
Nothing is ever 100%, but it was darn close. That this was a bad idea.
In the fall of 2021, Patrice invited Hart Director Ryan Smith to make his pitch directly to Dan and the rest of the force at police headquarters. Patrice had started to notice rank and file's reaction to the new department. Eye rolls, officers muttering about agendas, the woke generation. One senior officer asked Patrice, "What's this BS about being defunded through Hart?" That's why Patrice had invited Ryan to these meetings, to come talk with every single patrol officer, hundreds of cops.
You had to break down perceptions. You had to break down feelings, and you had to create environments where people could speak openly and honestly.
The cops had lots of concerns. Sergeant Dan Leader said most of them came down to fear. Fear for residents, fear for their jobs, fear for the safety of the new responders.
If they're going to deal with some of the same people that we've had to deal with, like if we're getting assaulted, what's going to happen to them?
Ryan Smith expected this big blue wall of police resistance. In the meetings, he could feel the existential dread in the air. The city was hemorrhaging officers. 58 left the department during the height of the pandemic and George Floyd protests. That was 8% of their whole staff. Dan said plenty of rank and file felt unfairly lumped in with the Minneapolis officer who murdered George Floyd.
What did we do? We're good cops. We didn't do anything wrong. Why are we having to go through this? There was a lot of trepidation about, well, what is this going to mean for us? And how is this going to affect what we've been doing for years?
And yet, Hart was happening. Ryan wasn't showing up for these weekly pummelings to cut some grand bargain. He wanted officers to be prepared for this change and maybe earn a bit of goodwill. That was true for community activists, too. To convince them that Hart was truly an alternative crisis response program, he co-hosted virtual town halls with the advocates and held smaller in-person focus groups in English and Spanish.
It was clear to me that it had to be a very intentional effort. It had to be consistent. You weren't going to do it with a few words or small gestures.
These steps, the town halls, the focus groups, the meetings with the cops, this was Ryan trying to live up to his nickname.
The Chickadee shows us how working in a cooperative team means more eyes and ears and fewer opportunities for predators.
Throughout the end of 2021 and the first half of 2022, Ryan Smith and Chief Andrews addressed rumors, tried to reassure officers.
We just needed to make sure that our officers knew that we're not replacing you. You still have work that you need to do as a law enforcement officer.
They used data to walk through officers' fears that Hart would put people in danger.
Everyone's going to have that, well, I remember this time when this one trespass call ended in a gunshot and an officer was hurt. That's a valid thing. We name that, and then we look at the data and put that into context. So that happens on less than 1% of 1% of the time.
Still, Ryan and Patrice were a long way from getting most rank-and-file officers bought in when Hart launched on June 28th, 2022.
Hello, Durham 911.
Clinicians start answering 911 calls. Unarmed social workers, EMTs, and peer support specialists jump in vans and hit the streets. They respond to homeless people panhandling, people thinking about suicide, parents past their breaking point. Sergeant Dan Leader listens to it all unfold on his police radio, certain he's going to hear social workers screaming for cops to come save them.
So I'll hear these calls come out. I'll hear the co-responders or the Hart team responding to it.
But much to Dan's surprise, the new team seemed to be doing just fine.
Whatever it is they're doing it right, and the call doesn't come back again.
There was still a bunch of skepticism and suspicion. Some officers would swoop in and respond to calls meant for Hart. Others would ignore orders to wait for Hart before engaging with a scene. This lingering pushback from officers frustrated Chief Patrice Andrews. She wanted them to see that Hart could make their jobs better, safer. Which brings us to that August night in 2022. Hart's been live for less than 2 months when Patrice gets the call about that barricaded man making threats.
He said, "I'm not coming out, and if you come in, I'm going to shoot you all."
The commander outside the home is proposing a SWAT team. At that moment, Patrice knows busting down the door could lead to violence, exactly what she wants to avoid. So she gets Ryan on the phone.
I said, "Look, this is what I have. I know that you all are done working for the day, and is there any way that someone can go out?"
She called me, and I told her that I would reach out to Abena. Abena is one of our clinical managers.
So I get the call from Ryan. I was with my children. I had just picked them up from school, and we were headed home. I knew something was going on because it was after hours.
Hart in the early days shut down for the night at 5.
I got home, got my children settled, let my husband know kind of what was going on. And then I called Chief Andrews to get a little bit more information and details on the situation.
Patrice tells the social worker, Abena Bediako, cool the temperature down. Convince the man to go to the hospital. Abena's done this job for 20 years. She lives for moments like this.
Some of the officers were already like, "Yeah, he's not really going to talk to you, but you can try." And I smiled because I'm like, okay, I'll try.
The 5'1" social worker digs in. She calls the barricaded man's father, who tells her that his son has been hospitalized before. Abena calls the man.
He was just angry. And so, okay, you can be angry. You can curse and you can yell. It's fine.
Her calls keep getting interrupted. Dad calling son, son calling dad. Up and down the street, Abena paces.
Some of the officers would come and be like, "How is he?" And I'm like, no, we're talking. Because sometimes people just need to talk and need to be validated.
On the phone, Abena keeps repeating herself.
"You're okay. Let it out. It's fine. And we're going to be with you."
After about an hour of calls, the man relaxes. Abena gives a thumbs up to the officers, who look back at her in shock.
He let officers come and search his room to make sure that, he was okay.
The man cooperates. He asks Abena, "Can I stay tonight? Go to the hospital tomorrow?" Abena calls Chief Andrews.
Abena said, "Well, he's not a danger to himself. He is intoxicated. Let's give him a moment. Let's check back in with him." And so we went about it a different way.
The next day, Abena drives the man to the hospital with a police escort following behind. The man checks himself in. Crisis averted. This was a huge moment for the young department. The idea that Hart was useful to cops was spreading. Patrice saw it.
Officers said, "Oh, so we can call them for this is great. This is great. So that means that we don't have to do this. We wouldn't have to do that, and they can help us."
Sergeant Dan Leader saw it too.
When I'm wrong, I'm the first one to raise my hand and say, "You know what? I was wrong." These people are going to help you. They're going to make your job and your lives on this job easier.
When Durham police officers first learned about Hart, just 37% told researchers that they thought the new teams would be a big help on mental health calls. Now, that's 77%. For Ryan Smith, this incident captured what he'd been saying to officers for the last year.
Most people do not think that story can end with that person just walking out without any handcuffs on, with no use of force, and be transported to hospital because he has threatened to hurt officers and hurt himself. The idea that a different type of response might be successful there is hard to imagine.
Put another way, Hart was able to prove that their unarmed responders could handle a volatile situation and have everyone walk away safely.
We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, Ryan Levy will tell us whether Hart is actually keeping people safe in Durham and about the biggest challenge facing this radical new department. I'm Angela Davis. This is Call to Mind, The Fifth Branch, a broadcast special produced by Trade-Offs from American Public Media. Welcome back. You're listening to Call to Mind, The Fifth Branch, a broadcast special from American Public Media's initiative to foster new conversations about mental health. The Fifth Branch was produced for us by Trade-Offs, a nonprofit news organization covering health policy. I'm Angela Davis. We're spending this hour in Durham, North Carolina, one of more than 130 cities and counties across the country that now send unarmed mental health workers to some 911 calls instead of police. Ryan Levy, the managing editor of Trade-Offs, has been following Durham's HEART unit for more than 2 years. Here's Ryan.
One of the biggest fears people have about alternative crisis response programs like HEART is that they're dangerous. Dangerous for members of the community, and especially dangerous for the unarmed mental health workers now dealing with unpredictable 911 calls. David Prater is one of those unarmed responders, and a lot of people worry that folks like David will get hurt, even killed. HEART takes that concern seriously. So after every call, David and his coworkers have to answer a question.
Did you feel safe during this encounter?
Between their unarmed teams, clinicians in the 911 call center, and co-response with Durham police, HEART has answered more than 30,000 911 calls since the summer of 2022. 99% of the time, responders said they felt safe. After riding around with David and other HEART units for 30 hours, I realized why that number is so high. I assumed my ride-alongs in HEART's white minivans would feel like some mental health ambulance. We'd race from one crisis to the next. But mostly, it was pretty quiet. Checking up on an elderly couple.
Your dentist was just really worried, and she just wanted...
Gas station owners with panhandling complaints.
They just asked if you wouldn't do that in front of their store. Are you okay with that? I'm okay with that.
We gave people rides, helped people in their homes. None of it felt dangerous. HEART director Ryan Smith says that's by design.
We first looked at what were the calls that other cities already had some evidence to support that it was safe to do this work.
Trespassing, wellness checks, intoxication. Durham's own 911 data showed those calls rarely ended in violence for police. But just like with firefighters, EMS, and cops, Ryan says there's no escaping the danger that comes with this job.
I think it would be a mistake and disingenuous to kind of gloss over the risk and uncertainty that is inherent in any 911 call.
Ryan has tried to mitigate that risk. If a weapon is present, a HEART social worker responds with a police officer. Same thing when someone threatens violence. Durham police train HEART staff to stay alert on scene, and the program outfits teams with police radios to get back up fast. But taking on some risk, that's the job.
I think that's part of what being a public servant is I think government at its best is shifting burden and risk away from those that we serve to those who are signed up to be public servants.
It's worth repeating. Police in America have shot and killed 2,057 people who were in the middle of a mental health crisis in the last decade. 1 of every 5 police killings. Ryan believes, just like the other branches of public safety, it's worth putting HEART's first responders in harm's way to lower the risk that someone in crisis is hurt by the police. David Prater agrees.
It is a sacred duty.
David's official title is Peer Support Specialist.
I don't come to this work with a master's degree like our clinicians do. I come to this work with lived experience of homelessness, of a substance use disorder, with criminal convictions.
David told me about the years he spent addicted to crystal meth, living on the streets in Durham and Atlanta. Remember how all HEART employees have a bird name? David's is Phoenix, the powerful, mythical bird rising from the ashes.
I have no problem going under the bridge because I used to live under the bridge.
David stands about 5'9" with short, spiky black hair. He knows that anything can happen on any call. People have spit on him.
She said, "Look, white motherfucker, I don't want your f***ing help."
A shootout forced him to scramble behind a car.
We call for help on our radio. We've got shots fired.
David and I did a ton of ride-alongs together over my many visits to Durham, and I asked him a few times if he ever gets scared. Every time, he told me no. He said he knows he's got backup. Police are always just a radio call away, And he has a real faith in this work.
When we arrive at a call, we have no arrest power. We have no weapons. We are trying to help somebody get their needs met.
And like so many of the folks I met at Heart, he's willing to make sacrifices.
Is there a level of risk in this job? There is. Do I consider it an acceptable risk? I do.
Heart's unarmed teams have responded to more than 20,000 calls. They've only called for police backup over a personal safety concern 8 times, 0.04%. So yes, unarmed mental health workers can safely respond to 911 calls. The data bear that out in Durham and other robust programs across the country. Eugene, Oregon, Denver, Albuquerque. But programs like Heart are also, of course, being created to keep the people calling 911 safe. People like Yolanda.
That sun is bright.
We could stay in the shade, yeah, if this.
Yolanda is wearing a purple tank top and blue jeans as we pull chairs onto the small cement patio behind her narrow brick-fronted home. We're only using Yolanda's first name to protect her family's privacy. We face a small playground. People walk their dogs. Planes fly overhead. It's a peaceful afternoon. Yolanda tells me that 24 hours ago, things were anything but.
I don't know. She lost it, like screaming and hollering and throwing stuff and kicking stuff.
She had just told her daughter that she couldn't have friends over to celebrate her 13th birthday. Yolanda had planned a surprise party with family, but before she could explain, her daughter rushed to the bathroom, locked the door, screamed at her mom, "I hate you."
She wouldn't come out of the bathroom. She just sat in there in the dark. It was hard to watch for a child so young to be so emotional.
Yolanda, who was 38 when I met her, told me her daughter struggles with depression. She worried what might happen in that bathroom. And Yolanda's own challenges, depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, addiction, made it hard at that moment for her to keep it together too.
I started to get upset. I'm not gonna lie. It started to bother me that she was so loud.
When these situations hit a breaking point in the past, Yolanda yelled right back. This time, she stopped.
When I saw myself getting upset with her, I knew that was the wrong choice.
Yolanda's whole family struggles with mental illness. She says before Heart, she went through a stretch with her middle daughter where she guesses she called 911 about once a week. It was always the last resort.
I hate to say it like this, but you know, officers are usually pretty brutal people. No, none of us like the police. None of us like the police.
But the fights, she said, scared her. Punching doors, yelling, tears, cussing. She knew she needed help, and 911 was often her only option. Reluctantly, Yolanda would call, always on edge.
What officer is going to show up and be having a bad day and decide that today's the day that I'm going to use my badge to be able to do whatever it is that I want to do, and nobody's going to be able to do anything about it because I have a badge?
She worried. Will the police take my kids? Will the police take me to jail? Yolanda kept calling 911, but after Heart launched, she found them much easier to trust. Each time a team came out, she said she learned something, like how to check her own temperature when she was hot. Those lessons helped Yolanda see how upset she was that her daughter's special day was going so wrong.
So I grabbed a bag of peas out of my freezer and put them on the back of my neck, and I dialed 911.
She realized, thanks to tips like the peas, this was the first time she'd called 911 in 4 months.
Durham 911, what's the address of your emergency?
This is a recording of the 911 call Yolanda made. Durham digitally altered her voice.
Can you please send the Heart team, please? Can you please get them to come out here? Yeah, so again,
What happened next, I think, captures the difference between the two public safety branches. All 3 Heart teams were busy when Yolanda called. Instead, a police officer showed up.
He has a daughter that's around the same age as her, and he was able to kind of calm her down a little bit, but she still was a little irate.
The officer, at Yolanda's request, radioed for the next available Heart team. By the time David Prater's unit showed up about 10 minutes later, the officer had gotten the family to agree that Yolanda's daughter would spend the night at the hospital. An improvement over the standoff in the bathroom, but hardly ideal.
What 13-year-old wants to believe that, I'm so broken I have to go to a hospital on my 13th birthday?
The officer left, and Hart's social worker coaxed Yolanda's daughter out of the bathroom to talk upstairs in her bedroom. Yolanda stayed downstairs with the rest of the team. David says Yolanda was still clearly upset.
I can't have her here. I need her. I need space. She's got to go to the hospital. And so then we began talking, well, what other options are there? And Big Sister came up.
The Hart team asked if the 13-year-old could spend the night at Big Sister's place. Yolanda got the okay from her older daughter, and a few minutes later, the social worker came back downstairs with the 13-year-old.
Whatever they talked about was exactly what my baby needed to get off her chest. She wanted to cuddle. She was back to her usual self, the playful baby that I know.
Mom and daughter agreed. A Big Sister sleepover beats spending the night at the hospital. Yolanda looks at me. A light breeze stirs on the patio. She says as helpful as that police officer was, Hart helped more.
She texted me today and was like, hey, I love you. So she's better.
Two years after the birthday party blow up, Yolanda says things in her house are a lot better. She's sober, and Hart referred her to a therapist who connected her with therapists for her daughters. She says the skills Hart gave her family have helped them avoid arguments and meltdowns. She's still felt the need to call 911 a handful of times in the last couple of years. That's what happens when you're dealing with as much mental illness as she and her daughters are dealing with. But Yolanda tells me when she does call, she trusts who's on the other side of the door.
Do you feel safer knowing that Hart is an option, that you can call Hart?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Help is on the way. That's how I feel. Normally, when you hear 911 say that, it means absolutely nothing. But when you ask for the Hart team and they say help is on the way, to me, that is the biggest sigh of relief that I could possibly take during an altercation.
You're listening to Call to Mind, The Fifth Branch, a broadcast special produced by Tradeoffs. I'm Ryan Levy. In a 2023 survey of Durham residents, 57% said they were more likely to call 911 thanks to Hart. In a survey a year later, more residents were satisfied with Hart than with any other public safety unit in the city. But not everyone feels that way. Apartment managers and gas station owners I met wanted the police to show up when they called 911. They were angry when Hart showed up instead. And I talked to a few business owners who question Hart's value. Independent research on the safety impacts of unarmed response is still limited. A study published in October 2025 by researchers at Duke and the University of Michigan found that an unarmed Hart response was less likely to result in a crime report or arrest than if police responded to the same type of call. It found no difference in the likelihood of police use of force, which is already incredibly rare in Durham. The paper has yet to be peer-reviewed, but the findings line up with two other recent studies on unarmed response from Michigan and Oregon. Hart's unarmed teams have diverted more than 20,000 911 calls from police since the program launched 4 years ago. Durham Police Chief Patrice Andrews says adding Hart gives her more uniforms to throw at the dangerous calls. There's one other way Patrice sees Hart improving police safety, and that's by limiting their exposure. Sometimes that's from violence. Sometimes that's trying to protect them from future remorse.
I don't want any officer to ever look back 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now and regret how they treated someone.
Patrice carries that regret. Early in her career, she'd handcuffed a suspect's hands behind his back, but he kept stepping through the cuffs, bringing his hands in front of his body.
I told him several times, don't do that, stop doing that.
He ignored her. Another officer asked if she was going to let this guy get away with that.
And I said, well, no. And he said, well, then you need to do something about it. I took that as meaning that, you need to teach him a lesson. I remember grabbing him and just kind of picking him up and pushing him back down and picking him up and pushing him back down while he was in handcuffs. That was excessive and that was wrong.
Decades later, Patrice is known as a reformer, someone committed to making policing better. But sitting in her home in Durham, Patrice still struggles with what she did.
And if my dad knew that I had done that, my parents, they would have been so disappointed. How could I treat someone that way? How could I treat another human being that way?
Patrice knows there's no excuse and little sympathy for cops who use excessive force. At the same time, she knows it happens. And it's that much more likely to happen when cops respond to a volatile mental health crisis. Hart, she says, can protect her officers from their own worst impulses, like her with that man in the handcuffs. That's one reason she's supported Hart from the beginning.
It's me trying to make amends. I don't know where that man is now. I don't remember his name. I don't know that he ever remembers mine, but it's a part of me that wants to make it right because I had gotten it so wrong.
My time in Durham makes it clear to me. Hart, in many ways, is exceeding expectations. The program has established and maintained deep support from elected leaders, law enforcement, and the community. It's proven that unarmed mental health workers can safely respond to 911 calls that used to be answered by the police. But the last leg of Hart's mission, connecting people to services to deal with the underlying problems that led to that 911 call, Director Ryan Smith says that is very much still a work in progress.
I knew that it would be hard. I knew that it would be messy, but that it would be the hardest thing that we do. That's the thing that surprised me.
Ryan told me that when he designed the program, he knew his team would meet people with problems bigger than anything social workers could solve out of a van. But he wanted to avoid the department from sliding into long-term care. So Ryan limited what they call care navigation to 30 days.
We're not there to provide all the services. We're there to try to make the most of sometimes our underfunded, fragmented system of support. That's why we have care navigation.
Over and over again, though, Hart's care navigation efforts have run into obstacles. Hart has connected just 20% of people to follow-up care. Some of that is because 1 of every 3 people Hart meets on a 911 call never respond when care navigators reach back out. And some of that is because housing and mental health services in Durham are really limited.
We don't control all of the other agencies that we're working with. We don't have access to all of the housing that we need. And yet still, when there's an emergency call, we're the ones showing up trying to figure out how to do our best with a system that is not resourced enough.
Ryan tells me his team can feel demoralized, especially when it comes to dealing with people who are unhoused. Ryan hears people in the office say, "It feels like we're just a Band-Aid. I don't want to be just a Band-Aid." The department has made some internal changes to try to better connect people to care, like more quickly matching care navigators to people in crisis. But more and more, Ryan feels like that's just not enough.
I feel very clear of where our boundaries are, and yet this role of being kind of the last line of care means that we're in this state of pushing up against those boundaries and trying to figure out how to advocate for a broader solution.
In Hart's early years, Bo Ferguson was the personification of those boundaries Ryan was pushing on.
He and I talk about this every week.
Bo was Durham's deputy city manager for public safety and Ryan's boss. Like a lifeguard at the beach, Bo kept an eye on Ryan, made sure he didn't swim out farther than he should. It was important to Bo that Hart stay focused on crisis response.
I have worked really hard to keep some buffers and boundaries around the expectations of what this team is supposed to do so that we can focus on fulfilling this really critical mission that we were given, which is to respond to 911 calls when people are in crisis and help them resolve those emergencies.
But Bo heard Ryan when he told him that people were falling through the cracks, that his team wanted to do more than be a Band-Aid. So Bo gave Ryan the green light to test the waters of stuff that fell well outside the scope of 911 response, like a small pilot program Hart launched in 2024 to help some of the city's residents with the most complex needs. This pilot allowed Hart to go far beyond the normal 30 days of care navigation and meet several times a week with 5 of these folks in hopes of getting them the treatment, housing, and support that they need.
We have to stand in this gap because at the end of the day, we're going to keep getting 911 calls.
The poster child for this pilot was a guy we're going to call Martin.
I've worried a lot about Martin.
Martin has lived on the streets of Durham for more than a decade. He struggles with mental illness, usually unmedicated. City officials have held meetings just about Martin.
There was a clear gap. No one was working with Martin.
Martin's too sick to jump through the necessary hoops to apply for housing, but he's not sick enough to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital against his will. His case helped convince Ryan and Bo that Hart needed to leap over their first responder boundary. The department declined my request to shadow the staff who work with Martin over concerns that a stranger with a microphone might antagonize his paranoia. Hart staff spent months painstakingly building trust with Martin. They brought him food and clothes. They tried to get him connected to housing and treatment. When Hart helped Martin get an ID, Ryan felt like that was a huge win. John Warasilla was less impressed.
Once you've gone to that point that you're putting in those kind of investments, people are going to expect results out of it. And the results we were seeing were not satisfactory.
John is an architect and real estate developer in downtown Durham. Martin often takes over a 5 by 20 foot corral where John's business tenants take out their trash. Sometimes Martin scatters that trash. Sometimes he screams at people.
How is it that one individual can disrupt 20 people's lives and investments and well-being, and that's okay?
In the months after I met John, he kept me posted on Martin, sent me pictures of Martin surrounded by garbage, emailed me a story from a neighbor who said they saw Martin scream at a young family. To be clear, John likes Hart. He likes the idea that someone other than police can show up and de-escalate certain situations. And he appreciates that Hart is investing time and resources into helping Martin. But John sees Hart as ill-equipped to tackle all the major problems they're trying to address.
They will tell us we're working on it. They tell us this list of things they're doing. At the end of the day, it's not resolved. So at a certain point, you're like, I appreciate all the effort that's going into this, but this is not functioning as a solution.
Ryan Smith understands John's frustration. He shares it. Bo Ferguson does too. At the beginning of 2025, Bo was promoted to Durham's city manager. He heard almost immediately from business owners like John, as well as other residents, city council members, nonprofits, that the city needed a new approach to homelessness. So in one of his first major moves as city manager, Bo officially let Ryan head for the deep end.
I moved our homeless services from a department that was primarily focused on housing and moved it to the community safety department.
Like a police department has a homicide unit and a traffic unit, Durham's community safety department now has Hart with its unarmed 911 responders and what the city calls a stabilization services unit. This new unit connects people that Hart meets on 911 calls to longer-term care and support. They do street outreach to the city's homeless population, and they oversee all of Durham's work to address homelessness. Bo and Ryan agree that it made sense for the community safety department to start with just 911 calls. Adding Hart was a radical shift to Durham's emergency response, and Ryan and his team needed to focus on getting that right. But as Bo told me, Hart grew up fast.
Going from kind of a scrappy new idea that we were figuring out as we went to a clearly established, well-respected branch of public safety.
Bo saw the pilot work that Hart was doing with Martin, how limited they were in their ability to actually address the problems Martin faced and the problems he created for people like John. Bo also saw how, when given the opportunity to really dig in, Hart was able to do what most people thought was impossible.
I remember when Ryan texted me the picture of Martin unlocking the door for his house for the first time.
After 14 months, we were able to find placement for Martin in a permanent supportive housing unit where he is still.
Martin still has a long way to go on his journey. HART staff still meet with him regularly to keep him on his meds and connected to other services to make sure he stays housed. And Ryan Smith still has a long way to go on reimagining Durham's homelessness services. But Bo is confident he can do it because Ryan's done it before.
Some of this is acknowledging I have a tremendous leader and giving that leader some of the hardest problems in Durham because that leader was successful at the last batch of really hard problems at Durham. And if you come back in 2 years, we'll see what else I've thrown at him.
Ryan keeps taking on these daunting challenges because he knows how high the stakes are.
Some of the people that we encounter most often in this work are in such precarious, vulnerable positions with seemingly no one else in their corner that if we don't continue to show up, then it does feel and we do worry that it's a matter of life and death.
Ryan knows he and his department can't do this alone. They need the community nonprofits, the treatment centers, the shelters. It's going to take building the same kinds of alliances Ryan helped forge between HART and Durham Police. Remember HART's bonding thing, where everyone on staff gets a little bird nickname? Ryan's, you may recall, is Chickadee. This is what chickadees do. Build alliances to solve problems.
You know, I didn't realize it at first. I thought it was just kind of a cute throwaway name, like, oh, the chickadee. It's just a tiny little bird. I thought people were having fun with it. And as I learned more about the chickadee, yeah, it felt like it fit really well.
For Call to Mind, I'm Ryan Levy.
Thanks for listening to Call to Mind, The Fifth Branch, a broadcast special from American Public Media's initiative to foster new conversations about mental health. Call to Mind, The Fifth Branch was produced by Trade-Offs. Original reporting for The Fifth Branch full podcast series was completed by Trade-Offs in partnership with the Marshall Project and funding support from Just Trust and the Sozoze Foundation. The Fifth Branch was reported by Ryan Levy with help from Mark Maximov and edited by Kate Cahan and Dan Gorenstein. It was mixed by Andrew Perella and Cedric Wilson. Additional support from Catherine Dougal, Shannon Crane, and Jessica Silverman. The executive editor of Trade-Offs is Dan Gorenstein. Music in this episode comes from Blue Dot Sessions and Epidemic Sound. Call to Mind's senior editor is Stephen Smith. Our technical director is Alex Simpson. And Jessica Bari is our senior producer. I'm your host, Angela Davis. Thanks for joining us for Call to Mind, The Fifth Branch from APM, American Public Media.
Want to hear what one listener called the most disrespectful show he's heard in 20 years?
Join Donna, Liz, and Amina at 10 a.m. on Thursdays for Surly Voices.
A fresh, fun, feminist take on current events, politics, and social justice.
Slaying the patriarchy, one show at a time.
Surly Voices, Thursday at 10 a.m. on WMNF 88.5 and WMNF.org.
Hi, this is Mitch Perry, reporter with the Florida Phoenix and one of the co-hosts of the new public affairs show here on WMNF called The Skinny, where we give you the real straight deal. I'll be joined every Friday morning at 11 a.m. with my co-hosts, Ben Montgomery and Ray Roa, editor-in-chief with Creative Loafing, as we get in depth on some of the biggest stories happening in the Tampa Bay area and Florida. That's this and every Friday at 11 a.m.
So there you have an idea of our news and public affairs shows for Thursday and Friday. Remember, if you've been enjoying these episodes of Call to Mind, let us know. Please send an email to the newsroom at WMNF.org and tell us what you'd like to hear on Wednesday mornings between the morning show and Talking Animals. Speaking of which, Duncan is here for another edition, and that is coming up next after NPR News. This is WMNF Tampa.